Based in Berlin, and I have the honor of introducing the Artist Talk at BcmA. And before I introduce these two incredible artists, I'll just tell you a little bit about the space for those of you who haven't been before or who are joining us for the first time. So Berlin Musho Arte is an art space to create conversations between German and international artists who are based in Berlin. It's a non-profit space, and in addition to regular openings, they also have workshops, events, and artist talks, which is what you're here for tonight. So if you're interested in learning more about the space, you can check out BcmA online, or you can speak with one of the members of the collective who's coming later, Jay Gard, who will be joining us in a few minutes. And now I'm really happy to introduce our two artists. So first we have Dorothea Nold, whose sculptures you can see here in the space around us. Dorothea is a sculptress who explores the transformation of social, physical, and urban spaces and their connection and interrelation to architectural forms. In her sculptures and installations, she draws on her travels in different countries and sociocultural contexts, which serve as the primary catalyst for specific working methods, a resolute response to materials, and formal references. In 2008, Dorothea experienced a 7.8 earthquake in China, and since then she has worked with unstable components, such as materials whose properties contradict their use. Dorothea graduated from the École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and is completing a PhD at the HFBK in Hamburg. She has received numerous grants, including from the Stiftung Kunstfonds, the Senate of Berlin, and has been invited to residencies in China, Mali, Armenia, and Switzerland, among others. Her work is also shown internationally. And then on her left, we have Karsten Konrad, who creates sculptures, wall reliefs, and room installations from elements that he excavates from bulky waste or at flea markets. In his work, we find references to minimal art, architectural thinking, and an enthusiasm for the materialization of abstract images and ideas. Karsten, who lives in Berlin, correct? Yes. Studied art at the Academy in Mainz, free sculpture at the HTK Berlin with David Evison and Marina Abramovic, as well as at the Royal Academy of Arts. He has been a professor at the University of Arts in Berlin and the China Academy of Art in Hangzhou, and has exhibited all over the world, from London to La Paz. So please give a warm welcome to tonight's Artist Talk to Konrad and Dorothea.
So, you want to talk about control?
Or uncontrol.
Or uncontrol.
Which is maybe there's no control without uncontrol, maybe.
And you mean that more than that the control thing is always in ceramics, because you have this drying process, or creating, drying, and then put it in the oven, and then this is the risky part. Sometimes for the glazing, it's a second time oven, and it's always not sure if it works.
Yeah.
With ceramics, it's always a surprise, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're in a business for, don't know,
Yeah.
20, 30 years.
Exactly. Already in ceramic itself, you never know what's happening exactly. And maybe what surprised me in these new pieces was the amount of uncontrol I could experience. Because even if you know that there can be a surprise, you somehow still expect something. I think, or I expected always something. But to be completely get out of this expectation was something completely new and a new dimension of uncontrol for those pieces.
And also to let the oven do the job. If it's like things happening like this.
Exactly.
That it's normally for like a commercial, for commercial like ceramic people, it would be like, okay, the thing is wasted. you
Yeah.
know, and you make something
But you know,
more dynamic out of it. So
at the beginning, I also thought it's wasted. The first time it was like this, I also thought, oh, completely not what I want. And I think it's about also expectations in your artistic production. What does this mean to have expectations in your work? And then, I mean, if the kiln is doing the work, it's also a little bit annoying, right? I mean, you should be the one doing the work.
no, but it's a mixture, or
Yeah.
it's a dialogue, because I see in your work, it's like, it's this sort of, it's always these open structures, which probably come from your China experience with collapsing buildings. But it's like, but they sort of hint at different probably regions. For example, this one I would think of a 60s East German kindergarten metal fence. Something, so little warm,
Yes.
these funny little East colors which they had, and then this looks more like, I don't know, Asian
Yeah.
in a way, and it's one thing which also, well, I'm also interested in architecture as an influence, and I'm like a hobby architecture historian, I also, and our built environment and everything is like so, it's like the main topic for me, and I would, and also like when does it become an abstract form, when it becomes a person, or like this magnification of architecture, which also happens in my
In your
work.
work, yeah.
So yeah.
But maybe architecture is also always a body in a way, because architecture is what makes us. I mean, architecture was there before us, and so I think there's a huge part of us, taking the shapes of what surrounds us. I mean, it's beyond this idea of culture. It's really what shapes us, the way how buildings look and how infrastructure is made. And I think you cannot really step out of this, because architecture was there before. And so it's also always a kind of a body in my perception, because our body is an architecture itself, and we live in architecture. So I think it's really, a strong connection. And as more cities develop in a way like this city, it feels estranged, because there's a lack of this organic forms and shapes, and somehow I think I'm happy to find them here again, because they remind me of bodies, but in fact they are also architectures. You know what I mean? They have this.
I think what was, the control thing, but I think I don't know, because you have so much control over all the other stuff, that it's really a thing which sometimes let you go. For example, this, using this floor, and the color of the wall. It's like really clever, because we have this nice worn out wooden floor, but it's really problematic. I also had a show here with my students, and the show I was involved. It's always difficult with the floor.
Yeah, the floor is.
For sculptures. Sculptures always you like this. Sculpture is always different problems than painting.
And unstable of course.
Yeah, but probably the sand helps them to stand because you can
Exactly.
sort of yeah, because otherwise it would be like a wooden floor, which is not really proper fixed, and you move here, it goes up here.
Exactly.
So you can't,
Exactly.
you have to do it.
You have to earthquake again. Yeah.
So, and with the color, also the wall color matches perfect with the thing, so you have like an open, it's like on Mars or something.
Yeah.
It's very, very good.
And we have the
Very
same.
controlled.
That's true. There's a very controlled component. And I mean, we have the thing in German, auf Sand gebaut. And I don't know if it exists in English as well. You have this too?
As a children, is it okay if I give too much context?
No, please go forward.
I grew up in a very conservative Christian environment, and there's a song about, it's basically saying, don't build on sand. When I moved to Berlin, I was like, oh no. It's really deep. It's deep. Yeah, so yeah, we know this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's maybe our times also. I mean, it's everything's built on sand in a way. And you can make concrete out of sand.
Yeah, and that's why sand also, like special sand is very rare now. It's like gold, or getting in this sort of gold standard direction because it's getting rare. Both these sand, isn't this like this bird sand or something?
Oh, it's called quartz sand.
Yeah.
But probably they use it also for birds, but they use it for a lot of high-tech stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know before when I started to research which kind of sand. Quartz in fact makes ceramics melting, which is interesting for those works again. This was all made at EKWC. It's a ceramic residency in the Netherlands. It's Europe's biggest and nicest ceramic residency. They do residencies for around 12 weeks, and they have huge, massive kilns. And you have a huge workspace, and this is, I think, one of the rare places where you can really develop new works because they have a lot of support, and there is an incredible amount of different materials, so you can do experimentation on glazing, on discolored. So I pigmented all this clay. They have machines in order to do so.
Pigmented?
Yeah.
Instead of like spraying it? Or?
Yeah, so these pieces, like the pigments are in the clay, so it's all the same clay body, but I mixed a different set of colored clays.
Is it like the normal black? This is not a normal black
No,
clay.
this was all white at the beginning, and then I made different batches of colored clays because I wanted to mix them, and you have to stay with the same kind of clay. And I didn't want to think about surface because coming from this sculptural idea, I'm interested more in the materiality and in this whole aspect of materiality instead of painting them later and thinking about surface and adding something on top. So this is how I came to this different colored clay bodies, which I then can combine. So I can combine blue ones, green ones, and I put them one time in the kiln and that's it.
Ah, really? There is like a pigment to color clay.
Yeah, like this, it's basically the same pigments you would use for clays. You just need much more. You need a huge amount, and you pigment, in fact, the clay. So you add 10% of pigments in the clay. You mix it very well. It's very hard work. And yeah, but the effect is that I have the clay directly colored, and I don't need to think about anything later.
No, that's I didn't know it was possible in that range of colors.
Yeah, but
Some of them are shiny, no?
Yeah, some is glazed, I think.
yeah, some little parts are glazed, but really only details here and over there. I glaze some details, and it's also interesting because the colors have different functions. So the blue, for example, is coming from a cobalt oxide, so it's an oxide, and it's sintering already at a lower temperature than other colors. So for example, this piece over there with this very dark blue, this bends so much because of the oxides in the clay, because already at a certain temperature they start to sinter, meaning to melt. And this
so when you,
impacts...
and you didn't have this, but this sort of like a rolled up sunshade effect, you didn't have it in the, when you did it?
When I...
Like here, these forms?
These forms? No, these I also built like this, and I glazed them also from the beginning. But the yellow and the red and also the green, they are not so melting. They are not melting so early than the blue and the black. So somehow also the pigments in the sculptures define the form, or have at least an impact on the later moment of uncontrol, let's say. So colors are...
But like this rose color, this is in the clay.
Yeah.
But the clay is probably also like, because you have, normally you have like a gray clay which burns or fires white.
Yeah.
So you always have a different color when you work with it than when it gets out of the film.
Yeah. So before firing it looks pretty different.
Yeah, that's also a surprise.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I mean, a little bit. I made a lot of tests, but it's true that, for example, this piece I only made tests at a very high firing, and I had no idea how it would come out at if you fire 300 degree lower or 200. It's changing also the color. So it's this whole, I have no idea. I mean, maybe you can spend 20 years in researching every color and every temperature, or you just can open the kiln and have a surprise.
Yeah, they can. I was this year. I was I had a guided tour to the workshop in Kiel. Yeah, and it's newly built only for workshops, a house next to the old university building. And they have a kiln which is like the size of a sauna. And there was the guy who runs it, I think he was Chinese. He had all these diagrams of these firing curves. They would always, so there would be, I think he probably tries to minimum the surprise factor, because it was like really, you can do it really totally scientifically.
Yeah.
You have like fire curves, and then you have you document every firing. It's documented before, after. So it's like
you can make a rocket science out of it for sure. But still, then there are effects you don't know. I mean, it's just amazing in ceramics that you have a kind of a combination you would have never thought about. That you lower the kiln, I think, with more stuff than usual, and I don't know, or some little thing changes, and so probably this is also the fascination about it.
Yeah, magic.
Yeah, and that also the fact that we that surprises are something nice, to embrace this a little bit, because the question is, I mean, how do you do in your work this? How do you deal with this idea of how much surprise do you let happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I have like some sort of inner picture, but I work like with the material, and I don't know how it ends. So I sometimes restrict to certain colors or certain material, which sort of gives a little direction. But no, it's. I think if I would know how it ended up, it would not interest me as much.
You don't do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's this sort of working dialogic with the material or the sculpture, and yeah, to get somewhere where what you didn't have thought of before, and at at some point you know, okay, now it's good, it's done. It has like, because it's, I think with sculpture it's even more though, you create something which stands in your way. I think it has and sculpture generally in terms of selling, it's always much worse than putting a picture of your sofa or something, you know. It's always, and one reason is also that it's like, it stands in your way, it's coming too far off the wall, and I think probably it needs more sort of legitimation to be there.
Yeah,
It's,
because it has a very
picture
strong
is a picture,
presence,
and it's
yeah.
bad or worse, but sculpture, it's more this, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah, it's always a little bit like a person, you never know. I mean, in most cases it went well, but you never know what to do in the then you still have it, and then you have to deal with it, and all those questions. I mean, but I probably it's also because we really engage in this volume, in this. I also perceive it as in German I say gegenüber, like something in front of me, like because it's giving back something. So, but somehow in those pieces I also like that I jumped over a certain process, you know, that I haven't been there for everything. Like I hand it over and I receive it back and it's different, and there's this gap between, this gap out of my abilities or whatever.
Yeah, I think
And
this
it was
is
a nice feeling when I started to understand that there's something new happening for me.
I found out in a book that you were studying with one of the biggest sculptor heroes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So Richard Deacon, who has like an amazing body of work and in all materials and always very often very big. Also, like it's really sculpture.
It's really sculpture, yeah.
And it's and you wouldn't. I don't know. It's perhaps a little architecture. It's not because sculpture is always till I don't know. Sculpture was till the beginning of this century. It was always human form. You know.
Yeah.
So and then they had certain laws you had to obey. It was like
I mean, at least in Europe or in this
right,
European context
right,
or
right,
in
right. In Africa, probably there were also in the centuries before, like
in Asia,
in South America or Middle America, probably. It was always more abstracted in a way, but it was mainly depicting of a human form, and then that is to create structures, architectures, objects, something which is not that old, compared to like painting.
There is also this an absurd aspect somehow in it, because I think what I learned from him, or what I always admired, is to push materials to their limits or beyond.
Yeah.
I think this was, he would not teach this in a way, but this is really what was always there, that a material is not necessarily, I mean, it has always a purpose, and especially ceramics. We have a specific idea what you can do with ceramics and what not. But that ceramics can also do what you want it to do, and to push the limits and try it out. I think this is definitely something I've seen with Richard's work. a lot, like bending this huge wooden things and like
Crazy. You must have a real like factory for his works.
yeah, he has good technicians. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it's also sculpture. What really interests me is to have this technical dialogue with materiality and with form, but not to make it feel anymore that there's a huge technical impact behind, because then we are really back in architecture and construction or whatsoever, but not to make feel what technical knowledge is necessary.
It should be sort of
In order-
more like German would say selbstverständlich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you don't question anymore, is this a material purpose, or is this material appropriate for this and that form? You don't ask it anymore at a certain point, because, I mean, it's there.
Does people have questions for us, the artist?
I'm not sure if the ones who are not familiar with the ceramics, if they know what really happened in the kiln, because I think you should mention that they were completely straight in the beginning, and at a certain temperature they moved. I'm not sure if everybody understood from the beginning that they were completely straight, and all the movement, what was happening now, it came from the heat.
Yeah, the pigments
And
in
the
the
color, yeah, the color
clay,
change,
yeah,
yeah.
and the heat. And there, I mean, there was in probably every form there is this one weak point, and sometimes I saw it before, but mostly I didn't. But there's this one weak point which gives the direction of movement, and it follows a certain rule also in the kiln, because it's starting to bend at a certain point, and with some I had an idea, but with, for example, the blue one, it was super straight, and it was just leaning to one side of the kiln, and I will never know why it moved to this or that side. And
But it never breaks.
it never broke, and it never. There were sometimes several pieces in the kiln, and they never collapsed in each other. It's also really funny. I mean, for the big ones, we made barriers, and we really made them, kind of something to stop them move at this. Yeah, to stop them. But sometimes they just naturally had their direction. And
I'm curious about when you said there were parts that you started stepping away from when you handed it over. Were you talking about kiln loading, or what did you mean?
of the process, I mean, what's happening in the kiln. I could have tried to control more, or support them more, or find a way to construct them more stable, or I don't know. And from a certain moment, I had this feeling of, no, there's something really important going on out of my sight, and I was just jumping around the kiln like crazy, waiting to see the result.
Yeah, only praying helps.
Boy, yeah.
But it also has to do
No
with
disrespect. It was nice, thank you.
but it also has to do with the water, which is still inside the clay. Does that have to do with this?
It's really
The drying process, does that play a role?
maybe, but it shouldn't too much, because the drying process is very fast. I mean, I load the kiln when they're still humid.
Really?
Because- yeah. But I don't fire right away, but I load them humid, because when they are dry, they are very complicated to transport, because then they are really...
I know. It's always, okay.
So I move them when they're still leather hard, and then I let them dry in the kiln, and then I start the firing process.
Okay.
So this
This is good.
gives already a kind of security. But later, I mean, there are, like ceramic, there are a million factors which can impact the amount of temperature, how fast you go up, how fast you go down. But at the end, it's not so interesting anymore. So why is that? Because if you once found out that it's happening, then like it's discovering this mystic force from outside of the universe or whatever, and it's
But
nice.
you fired high.
I find
And you fired higher than the pieces you did before EKWC.
much higher.
And so you have also bigger shrinkage when you fire higher.
Yeah.
So that is also a reason, I think, why there is a move, or more of a move.
And the Schamotte is also one.
Yeah.
Are there high Schamotte in these places?
40%, I think. I mixed.
So how much is the shrinking? 10%?
10%.
10%.
Yeah. 10%, yeah. Which is quite a lot.
Mm.
It's like porcelain,
Mm.
like soft porcelain. Mm.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
And this high, this shrinkage makes it also look so condensed, I
Yeah.
guess. I mean, you feel so sometimes you might doubt if it looks almost like stone at a certain degree.
What temperature?
1225.
I think there's
Depending on the pigment. Oh no?
Hmm?
Some depending on the pigment you used. Because when you found out with a with a blue pigment, you fired them.
This was fired a little bit lower, but it's still bending. I mean, this blue is just crazy. This cobalt oxide is just, it's crazy. I think you can fire it at 1150 and it's already bending.
Because it's getting fluid.
Because it's melting very early. Yeah.
And to come back to the question of control and uncontrolled,
Yeah.
there seems to be a really interesting correlation between those two, because there is not a straight line. Because if you think like, okay, I'm losing control and I'm in control, that the control will just gradually diminish. But it's actually not the case, because if you're in control, it means you're using material that you actually know what happens, and you build something and you know that's going to do what it's going to do, what I know. But gradually losing control, you need to have more control. It's like driving a car slowly. The car does everything, you don't need to do anything, but if you drive a car on an icy road, you start to control so many variables suddenly. Even though some of the control is lost, you start to actually influence the car more than you do. How does it influence your work here? Because you need to suddenly control way more, like the pigments and the material and everything, what happens. Because you cannot just do anything, it will just collapse in the oven and it will just...
Yeah, it's true. I think there's a little bit both of it. So there's a lot of control beforehand. Then from a certain moment, there's just this, okay, and now I did enough. So let's see. But you're right that there's beforehand a huge amount of control. I mean, as I said, I was also running a lot of tests and I tried out a lot of stuff and everything. But I think it's more an attitude now to have this moment before you finish that you say, enough from now. I did enough, and I have the trust that something happens which will make it more interesting that I could possibly do. And I think this was really for me a game changer. This moment that I didn't want it to. Because I was really disappointed from the very first one, which happened, because my expectations were blown away, and I opened the kid and said, oh, that's not what I want. And to understand that there's something happening which I found at the end more interesting that I could personally do. So, and I think it's like everything, when you start to do something very often and very good, you have this amount of control so much saved in your body, you don't even think about it anymore. You just do it because you did it a lot of time and you don't think about it anymore. And I don't know if we then still can speak about control. It's more, what do you think? Or is
It's like cycling, swimming. You have to possess a certain amount of control.
control,
but also of control in the sense that you know what will happen. Or, yeah. So you know that there's chances, but still you sort of can predict it better.
Yeah, you predict it in a way, exactly.
Yeah. And did you ever throw one away?
No,
No.
not of this series. Even this one, this exploded in the kiln, and I was, I thought about throwing it away at the beginning. This was high like that. And the plate down there exploded, and I had a lot of tests in the kiln, and it was like, you vomited over all my and I put it out, and my first impulse was, yeah, well, it exploded, so it's trash. And then when it was separated, I realized, no, there is still, it's still a piece. So no, I did not even, not a single one. And I think this is the fascinating thing also after this residency, that it's not what I expected. There happened a lot of different things, but not a single one was for the trash. I think I was throwing away more control pieces before than now. Because maybe it's like life, it wants to be happen, it wants to be there, and you have a kind of respect also towards it, because it manifested itself the way, and it wants to be like that, so we have to leave it.
Thumb of God.
Somehow, this energy of...
But it's made out of these sort of little beams.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember having seen a picture where you were with like full-bodied ceramics. You also did that?
Yeah, I also did that.
Like really like...
For out.
Like turned on a, like...
Built up.
Vessels.
Like
Something.
vessels, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so...
That's a project at the moment for an outdoor sculpture, which will be outside, and this will be much more robust and more this ceramic idea, like stabled objects, ceramic vessels. So, but yeah, it's completely different from those.
Yeah. Because I've thought, okay, because when I've seen these on the picture, I thought, okay, they made like massive and then they cut out.
Yeah. No, they really built up in a way. I made these beams, and then it's also a lot of control to make them. In fact, because they need in a perfect state of dryness.
Exactly.
So it's really more a logistic problem than a kind of. So I have like my different plates, and I wait that they have this state, and I control them, and then I can build them up. If they are too smooth, they will collapse. If they are too hard, they are not. I cannot connect them anymore. So yeah, yes. Thanks for this thought. There's a lot. Yeah.
And it's also very much working with the elements. So, it's fire, it's water, it's earth, and it's the air which bends it.
Yeah, and the air, yeah.
So it's totally basic.
Yeah.
Like, really.
It's totally basic, and I think it's also somehow existential in a way. This kind of.
And totally put together with the architectural form, it's totally basic.
It's super basic.
It's super basic.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, what it's talking about, it's really the basics of existence in a way.
Yeah.
And making this feel also.
Can you talk a little bit about the, for lack of a better word, curtains?
Yeah, I enjoy sometimes to add this architectural references, because without them, I think those are the last traces to move them into the sphere. But they can also become, more organic, or you can perceive them as something organic or almost tongues, or. but it's like the last reference towards the built environment in a way.
I find them very engaging. How much do you plan? Like, are you a sketcher? Are you a...
There's a sketch of the form of I make outlines, and then I start building. Yeah. So there's at least also in the construction a little bit uncontrolled, because sometimes.
But you start, you have like a round ground plan or an edgy ground plan.
Exactly. I draw the ground plan, and then I think how high approximately. I mean, I have to plan, those, if things like go out of the basic form, this I have to plan. Because it needs support in firing, so in firing process there is something under it, constructed in the same clay.
Ah, really?
Yeah,
like
because it has also to shrink this exact same amount. So I have like another mini sculpture underneath.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the
And
trophy part.
this is and they have then to shrink with the piece, and later I can take them out and I can keep them as they are also pieces in a way. I also make them in a particular color, because also for me, for the construction process, I want to see the difference between what is piece, what is support, and so this has to be planned. But everything else, like the size of the curtains or whatever, this is intuition, this is just happening.
And they never break on these joints?
No, so
Really?
far not. I mean, some broke when they are really bending a lot. Then up from a certain point, there's this weak moment, and of course, one has to break at the beginning when they're really strong bend. But they are not, that's probably the interesting thing. Why are they not collapsing, for example, or why they're like over this, why they are bending, they're leaning over, they have this soft movement, but they are not collapsing, they are not completely breaking.
No, it's funny, but it makes them more like metal. Remember when the 9/11, when the World Trade Center did this sort of metal rods, which were also like, the fire was were like bended. Some forms remind me of these sort of columns, metal columns, which are like
bended over. Yeah, and metal is melting at a lower temperature.
Yeah, right.
It's just, this kind of forms you cannot model them, or you cannot build them in a way.
No, but you can, with this unexpected experience, maybe you can apply that later in the oven, or just burn it at a higher temperature, or to create this distortion yourself.
To create this again, you mean?
To repeat that?
Yeah, I can, from now, I know that it's happening, and I know that I can use, of course I can use it as a, what is it, it's more than an aesthetic. I think it's really, it's a language, it's a sculptural language in a way. I can use it as part of my own language, but I will never be able to fully control it in terms of where is it going to bend, how is it going to bend. I just can give, this impulse maybe. And it's always creating forms you cannot make in a different way. It's too much fun to have this surprise and to have this heat and these elements make part of your work. Yeah.